session. So before we start, I thought I'll give a brief introduction about myself. As Ramya told, I did my PhD from Indian Institute of Science, after which I did a postdoctoral research at Georgia Tech, USA. And then I joined as program manager at NCBS, and I worked there for 2 years. And currently, I'm a grants manager at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So, being a research administration, what I do is to help faculty with their grant proposal submissions. So, the tips that I'm going to share with you today are based on my experience of submitting grants on behalf of faculty to the national and international agencies. And I've also served on the review committees for a few grants. So, the tips that I give you are based on my experience. So I would request you to take it in that spirit. There might be exceptions to it. People might have better ways of dealing with a grant proposal. So, these are entirely based on my personal experience. So please take it in that spirit. So let me begin. And, in today's session, if you think that I'm going to give you that, magic formula, which would win you any grant proposal, I would say that I'm going to slightly disappoint you because, there is no such magic formula for writing. This is a kind of a skill that you develop on the go. And, I think most of the attendees of today's webinar are life science graduates. So, we all would have had to draw diagrams during our, as part of our curriculum. And, not all of us would be great artists or good at drawing, but, still we have managed to do that. And how did we do that? We started by tracing or copying and gradually practicing and perfecting the art. Finally, when we draw a diagram, our focus will be on the parts that we need to label at the end, to get the parts right. So I would say it's the same thing with the case of grant proposals. You read research papers, or there are online sample grant proposals available online. So you kind of read all these research papers and grant proposals and get a gist of scientific writing. And then you gradually practice your writing and develop your style. When I talked about the analogy of drawing, I said that our focus will be on getting the parts right. The parts that we need to label, our focus will be on getting those parts right. So in a grant proposal, when I say that you gradually perfect the art of writing, you need to know what are these essential parts that a grant proposal should have. Only then can you build on improving it, right? So in today's session, that was what I was thinking. I mean, to share with you what are the essential parts a grant proposal should have and how you can better the art of writing. So this cartoon is very interesting, and this is what you essentially see after a review committee meeting. During any review committees, all the experts will meet together and they'll be given a pile of grant proposals. And at the end of the meeting, you will see that there will be, they'll have segregated these proposals into 3 piles. One will be, the smallest pile will be the one that has proposals that they have recommended for funding. And there will be like a much more bigger pile of proposals that are kind of the waitlisted ones, which we call the maybe fund category. And, it's heartbreaking to say, but the truth is a large chunk of it goes to the trash, which is the do not fund pile. So our aim is to get our proposal to the fund pile. And how do we do that? Let's see. Now, thinking about a grant proposal, you need to know where you should start. I would say the first step in any grant proposal is getting your idea clear. And, when I say you want to get your idea clear, how do you do that? I would say that, if you think you have an idea, you should write it down on a piece of paper because, when you write down something, you realize that you need to maintain a flow. So while writing down, you will identify the areas where you miss the connections and you will be able to establish those connections. And I would recommend you to start by answering a few questions that I have jotted down, you see on this slide. So try answering these questions. First of all, what is your idea? And second, what is the need that led you to propose this idea? And, often the research problems are kind of open research problems, and you might not be the first person who thought about that problem, right? There might be other people around the world working on the same problem. So you have to do a thorough research about what is going on and how people are approaching this problem around the world. And you should be able to come up with a unique approach and state clearly that what makes your approach stand out from what others are doing. So that's my maybe third and fourth points. What is your intervention and what is innovative about your approach? Now, once you have all these sorted out, you need to predict the expected impact and outcome of your proposed research. Because, if you are proposing something that probably ends up with a 3 or 5 year project that you're putting down in the proposal, the reviewer might think that that is not worth funding. You should always be able to tag your proposal to a long-term vision, as in, after the 5-year or 3-year that you're proposing this project, this will be the outcome of it, and this is how the future of it will be. You should be able to draw that roadmap. And you should also be able to think about what are your strengths to contribute to this proposal. That can be your unique expertise, or maybe a project that you undertook in the past. So you should be able to identify your strength and have a clear idea about how you will be able to contribute at each stage of the proposal. And by doing this exercise, you will be able to identify the places where your expertise might not be sufficient, and think about what complements your expertise there. And this will give you a lead on identifying your collaborators. And when you say that you collaborate with somebody on a proposal, don't collaborate with somebody just because you know that person. The expertise should always be complementary. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to. So, never force collaborations, but kind of, I would say, think about collaborating and choose collaborations wisely based on the how that would add value to your project. And also, you should have a clear idea about the timeline and cost of your proposed project. And when I say timeline and cost, even in the first stage, you should get into the maximum detail possible. When you talk about timeline, don't say that in 5 years I'm going to do this, but you should have a clear breakdown that in year 1 I'm going to achieve these 4 deliverables. Year 2, these are my deliverables. Same with the case of budget. You should know what it costs you at each stage of your proposal. So as I told, by the time you do all these exercises, you will be able to identify the gaps, whether you need to collaborate with somebody or you need maybe some facilities that exist in some other university. By the end of this exercise, you will have a clear picture of what you have and what you don't have and where you need to build. And you will have a fair idea about, what idea you're going to propose and how it stands out and its long-term impact. Now, moving on to the next step, now you have an idea and you're convinced that it is worth funding. And this next step is to identify the right funding agency. Now, you won't believe there are a hell lot of funding agencies out there, and there is no easy way to hunt for funding opportunities because there is no single free source that informs you about all the funding opportunities that are available. I can, just help you by giving a few sources from where, this information is might be kind of partially available. One is India Bioscience. India Bioscience is an organization. They are based in Bangalore, and they are kind of trying to share useful information for life science researchers. And I mean, the non-life science attendees who are attending today's webinar, please excuse me. I was under the assumption that, majority of the attendees would be life science related. So, all these might apply to only them. But yeah, so India Bioscience is one source that might be useful. I hope you can see the link that I've provided there. So please go to their website, and they have newsletters, and subscribe to those newsletters, and you will get alerts about at least some of these funding opportunities. And another place that you can look for is the funding database maintained by the Research Development Office at National Center for Biological Sciences. That is the the third icon that you see here, the RDO icon, the black thing that you see here. So please note down the link that you see here. Their website actually kind of is a very comprehensive database of opportunities available for life science researchers. But yeah, I would say kind of a disadvantage of this website is that it's not getting updated very frequently. And lastly, we at IISc, we also have a very extensive funding database, and we cover almost like 100 funding agencies, and we currently have more than 350 active calls. But due to certain institutional policies, we are not making our funding database public. But we have a page on upcoming deadlines. If you can note down the link that I have provided here and go to that website, you will see that we have listed the upcoming deadlines month-wise. Although that might not be, I wouldn't say that is that one source where you can get all the information. That will give you some kind of alert about the upcoming calls, and you can prepare well ahead of time. And yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that another option to get grant alerts is to follow the funding agencies on Twitter, because all the major funding agencies like DST, DBT, MHRD, CSIR, they all have Twitter handles, and they all announce their calls via Twitter. So that is an excellent way of hunting for grant opportunities. Now, moving on to the next slide. I told you the places where you can look for funding opportunities. And, as you go through the different funding agencies and different schemes of grant opportunities, it's important that you understand the funding agency. What does that mean? You need to understand how well your idea aligns with the interest of the funding agency. You can do this by maybe looking at their vision. If they have a particular scheme out there, they'll always tag it with a vision, and sometimes they also give a list of priority areas. I would recommend that, if available, look at their previously awarded grants, because that will help you identify the patterns in their funding. For example, they might have funded basic neurobiology research, which are maybe protein-based, from 2000 to 2005, and later they would have switched to applied neurobiology research funding, which focuses on clinical trials. So you kind of get a sense of their pattern of funding by looking at the previous awards. Also, by looking at the previous awards, you will also get to have an idea about the scope of their funding, as in whether they only fund large grants that involves multi-institutional collaborations, or are there grants for short periods, like 1 year. So you kind of get an idea about all these, and you can think of how well that suits with the idea and the proposal that you have. So as you do all these exercises, the focus should be that, never attempt a force fit, because if you try and force fit your proposal to some funding opportunity that doesn't align with yours, your proposal is probably going to end up in the trash pile. So never do that. Do your homework and make sure that this funding opportunity is apt for your particular proposal. Sometimes you can kind of maybe tame or shape your proposal a bit to align with the funding agency's interest. For example, the funding agency or the scheme that you're looking for is matching with the area of proposal that you're proposing. But still, they might be, you might be a protein researcher, and they might be funding the, proposals in the same area, but those with a computational approach. So in those cases, you can identify a collaborator who has a computational expertise, and, get him on the board, and get him or her on the board, and maybe shape your proposal a bit to add a computational aspect or a different computational approach to answer your same problem. So by adding such collaborations, you can maybe shape your proposal a bit and try to fit it into this funding opportunity. But I would say, always try for the best fit. And if nothing is available, you can kind of maybe slightly shape, and that will, the chances are still low, but you have better chances that you don't end up in the trash pile. That's what I want to say. So now we are at the stage 3. We have the idea ready, and we have identified a funding source, and now we actually get to write the proposal. Now, when it comes to writing the proposal, I would say the first thing would be to read the guidelines. This might sound very, very silly that, when I say you have to read the guidelines, it might sound very silly, but for any grant applications, this is the first thing that you have to do. When you go through the guidelines, you might see that they might give word limits for sections. They might ask you to arrange your content under specific headings, or maybe give your objectives as bullet points or add figures as a separate file. You might think that all these are not very critical, but the idea behind having a template is to help the reviewers to easily navigate through the pile of proposals. When a review committee meets, I have seen this, that they will have maybe 100 proposals at a time, and the reviewer will not spend more than 30 minutes on one particular proposal. So once they get through the first 5 or 6 proposals, they get used to the template that is used, and they gain speed. And if in between they come across a proposal that doesn't follow the same template, that might not turn out to be good. So, and same is the case with the budget. Sometimes the guidelines specifically say that you cannot ask for publication costs, or you cannot ask for international travel. So in such cases, if you ask for a cost that is not allowable, you will look like a dumbo. So it's good to avoid that. And you might have heard many people say that good grant writing is all about good storytelling. So now, what does it mean? Just take the analogy of watching a movie. A good movie starts by introducing the characters, and that sets the plot for the story. And then they introduce a problem, a solution to the problem, and a happy ending climax. I would say your grant proposal should be the same. You set the stage for the story by introducing the problem statement, and give relevant statistics, citations. So you set the stage for your story, and then introduce your approach or your intervention and how it stands out from what others are doing. And then your climax should be set by your long-term goal that you tag with your proposed project. Now, most funding agencies, they have will have online application portals, or they will have their format for a grant proposal. So if at all a funding agency doesn't provide a grant proposal template, these are the sections that your grant proposal should have: a title, an executive summary or an abstract, goals and objectives, methods and strategy, which includes the timelines and deliverables, a proper budget and justification, and additional information if it is relevant to your proposed project. Don't add these additional information if it is not relevant, because that's just going to bulk up your proposal, and people might lose interest reading irrelevant information. Now, now I think I'll go through each of these sections in detail. So the first is the title. When it comes to framing your title, I would say that this is something that you should really invest your time on, because often a title tells whether your proposal is relevant to the funding agency, and the keywords used in your title will determine who your reviewers would be. Now, you should be very truthful while framing your title. Don't just to make your title look fancy, don't use the so-called hot terms in science and technology. To give an example, I would say artificial intelligence and machine learning are kind of the hot terms in healthcare these days. So I have seen many proposals that are actually focusing on developing diagnostics, but in the title they somehow try to add machine learning or artificial intelligence. So what happens in such cases is nowhere in the proposal will they be talking about artificial intelligence or machine learning, but at the end, in their long-term goal, they'll say that, with this diagnostic device, we'll be generating a lot of data which can be mined using artificial intelligence, which will give more insights. So this is not, machine learning is not directly touched upon in the proposal. That's just a long-term vision. The proposed research doesn't touch machine learning at all. So if such a proposal use machine learning in the title, that will end up in a machine learning expert's hand, and the person will look at it and say that, this proposal nowhere discussed about machine learning, and that just goes to the trash. So avoid making such mistakes. And a few other tips while you consider framing your title are: try to be very concise, specific, and informative, and try to keep the word limit of your title within 15 words. To give an example, read the first title that I've given here: the systemic development of a local initiative to create a learning center for community education. Anybody who reads it, I had to read it 5 or 6 times to get the real sense of what they were actually trying to convey. On the other hand, if you say a local learning center for community education in Natal, that's very concise and clear. You are conveying what you want to do and who your target population is and what your impact would be. So try to keep something like that. And, while trying to keep the word limit within 15 words, don't end up being too generic, as in, helping girls in rural areas. That is very broad. You are not specifying girls of what age, in which area, and what is the kind of impact that you're trying to bring. But instead, if you say advocating for an end of child marriage in Kagati Gaon, Nepal, you're saying what you want to do, who your target population is, and where you're planning to carry out your study. So try to keep something like that. And I thought I'll just show you with an example on how you could work out your title. This is just one method, and if you already have a better way of framing a title, go with it. This is just for the beginners to help them ensure that they capture all keywords in their title. So here, for an example, I've taken my own PhD work as an example. My PhD work was focusing on identifying and characterizing novel anti-cancer drug leads from endophytic fungi. So to work on a title, I would say start by asking a few basic questions, like what is it about? My study was about identifying novel anti-cancer compounds. Methods: I used NMR-based isolation and characterization of compounds and anti-proliferative effect of these compounds on various cancer cell lines using biological assays. Who or what is your subject? I studied endophytic fungi from Serraca ashoka. And what is my expected result? I was expecting to get novel compounds with anti-proliferative activity that can be used as drug leads. So the next step, once you have written down all these things, try to highlight the keywords that you have used here. I've just highlighted few keywords from my answers. Now get all your keywords together, and then you just strike out the keywords that are repeating. So that is what I've done here, and I'm left with so many keywords. Now try to build a sentence using these keywords. Using the keywords here, I've built the sentence: isolation and characterization of novel compounds with anti-proliferative activity from endophytic fungi, isolated from Serraca ashoka, that can serve as drug leads. This is simply connecting all my keywords, but it's still too wordy and too long. There are 22 words here. The difficulty with the long titles are, as you read and reach halfway, you get lost. You forget what you started with. So try to make it even crisper. So once you reach at a sentence like this, try to work and trim it better. So I did that, and this is what I came up with: isolation and characterization of novel anti-proliferative drug leads from endophytic fungi isolated from Serraca ashoka. So that makes it crisper, and a reader, when they first read it, they kind of get the sense of what I'm trying to do. And, perfect, 14 words, I'm good to go. Now, that was about the title, and now we move on to the next section, which is the executive summary or abstract. As important as your title, this is the essence of your proposal, I would say. while you draft your executive summary, remember the points that we wrote down, earlier to get our idea clear. If you remember, I had mentioned a few questions that you could ask yourself to get your idea clear. So make sure that all of that is covered in your abstract. Like you have covered the problem, your proposed solution, uniqueness of your proposed solution, and the future of your research. When you write the abstract, it's always good to write the abstract at the end and never copy paste text from other parts of the proposal. And after writing the abstract, revisit it a day later to see if you can make it more succinct and concise, and if your abstract leaves a curiosity for the reviewer to read your proposal. What I mean to say is the reviewer should feel that you have a compelling problem and a convincing, innovative solution. If you can see the cartoon that I've given here, it says that my team has created a very innovative solution, but we are still looking for a problem to go with it. So that shouldn't be the case. You should have a convincing solution to a compelling problem. So now we move on to the next section, which is the statement of need. Taking the analogy of storytelling or a movie, statement of need is where you set the stage for your story. So here, try to present the problem, supporting it with recent, current, and relevant statistics and citations. For example, you might have to, you might be reporting something like the out-of-pocket healthcare expenditure in rural areas in India. So here, you should look for a report that reports the recent statistics. If you're in 2020, a report from 2009 doesn't hold relevant anymore. So if you don't find a recent report, I would say it's better to, just forget about putting statistics there. Only put statistics if it is recent. And present the problem as urgent and compelling, but at the same time, you should present it as a solvable problem. It's here it's a bit tricky to strike the perfect balance between, presenting the problem as compelling, at the same time leaving with some optimism that you have a solution to it. In the urge to explain your problem, do not end up over exaggerating the problem and filling the reader with pessimism. For example, you might be proposing something that kind of brings a solution to the deforestation problem that we are facing. But when you're trying out this, don't try to say that we are only left with 1% of the forest cover, and if we use the solution that I'm proposing, we can increase it only by 2%, which might help us survive for the next 10 years. So that fills the reader with a lot of pessimism, and they start to doubt whether your solution is actually a solution that would end this problem. So avoid doing that. And also, try to give clear, quantifiable impact of your solution. If it is a basic research that you're proposing, this might not apply. But those who are focusing on, the general social problems, this might be relevant. You're giving this quantifiable impact of your solution. For example, say something like, with the proposed solution, we intend to increase the healthcare affordability in village by 20-fold, or something like that. Now, next we move on to goals and objectives. Now, when we talk about goals and objectives, it's important to understand the difference between the two at the first hand, because goals are general aspirations that you want to achieve, and they are very broad, whereas objectives are the specific steps that you take to achieve your goal. Now, it's fair enough to have 3 or 4 goals with 4 to 5 well-defined objectives under them. And for when writing your objective, keep in mind the SMART rule, that your objective should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. For example, your goal can be something like decrease the degree of malnutrition among young children in Northwest Louisiana. And your specific objective under that goal could be, by the end of year 1, provide 125 mothers in Northwest Louisiana with a 2-hour training program that will provide health and nutrition information. Now you can see that this statement is very specific. It looks like an achievable target, and you are giving numbers against which it can be measured, and it sounds very realistic, and you're giving a time frame of 1 year. So this is how you should frame your objectives. Essentially, when you frame your objectives, those are, you're telling the reviewer that this is what I plan to achieve in year 1 or year 2, and this is against which you can measure my success. Getting your objective clear gives the reviewer a sense that you have really thought about the problem and you are very practical about the solution. So this stage is very, very important. And as you're framing your goals and objectives, make sure that you still have the need statement in mind, and every goal and objective is tagged to your need statement. You will have to practice this art of tracing back at each stage of your proposal. Now we move on to the project plan. Now, here is where you explain your work plan in detail. As I told earlier, you have to tag your work plan to your objectives and goals. You remember the tracing back art that I told. So, when you wrote your objectives and goals, you had to trace back to your the need statement. When you write your project plan, trace it back to the objectives and goals that you have stated. And, present your work plan in such a way that one activity leads to the next. The first figure that you see here, it's all about establishing connections. There shouldn't be a disconnect. It should look like a continuous process. And try to give details so that all necessary information that will let your reader visualize your idea. For example, if you can see the second figure on my slide, the first route map, of course, it looks okay, that it shows the route. But, compare it with the second figure that you see here. Those are giving landmarks, it's showing a McDonald's. First you take the right and then you see a McDonald's, and then you go forward, see a traffic signal, and then you take the left. So here, by giving those details, you make sure that the user never gets lost. So when you write your work plan, it should, this is the level of detailing that you should practice. This helps the reader to visualize what you're talking about. I mean, there is no, you shouldn't give a loophole for a confusion. Now, for each activity, define clear deliverables and a timeline. When you give your deliverables, it might be helpful to use bullet points to list out your deliverables. And when you show your timeline, it is best represented by a Gantt chart. In case you aren't very familiar with Gantt chart, this is how it looks like. It can be plotted using Excel, or there are other free softwares available for Gantt chart plotting. So this is this kind of gives a representation of your activity. Each activity is plotted against a timeline. So this helps the reviewer to easily comprehend your timeline. So as I told, provide clear timelines, and importantly, articulate the outcome of your study. Always, I mentioned in my introductory slide that you shouldn't be proposing something that is going to end with your 3 or 5 year proposal. You should always tag it to a long-term vision. Now, we are almost at the budget part of our proposal. Now, as I told earlier, make sure that, again, the art of tracing back, you make sure that everything that you have asked for is aligned to an activity to achieve your stated objective. Now, make sure that what you're asking is allowable. Read the guidelines and, make a note of costs that are not allowable, and make sure that you don't ask for it. And usually funding agencies have their own templates for budget. But if they don't provide a budget template, use a template that is easy to comprehend. Something like you see here, equipment, consumables, human resources, travel, contingency, and overhead are the general heads that for any grant proposal. The 6th point that you see here, incentive to awardee, that is a specific thing. I took it from a DA proposal. So this is specific to that particular grant, but the other ones, the 1 to 5 and 7 are the ones that you see in most grant proposals. So try to give tables like this so that it's easy for the reviewer to look at the cost. and give a breakdown for each of these. When you say equipment, list out what equipments you want. Against that, give a proper justification. The same with the case of consumables. And human resources. When you say human resources also, you should be able to, if you're asking for a junior research fellow, in the justification, you should be able to specify what kind of activity you are planning to perform with this junior research fellow. And always check your map. It shouldn't be that when the reviewer adds it up, it ends up in a bigger number or a smaller number. So make sure that you check your map before the submission. And the last point is additional details that you provide. Now, this is really optional, and if the funding agency template asks for additional information, don't be too pressurized to add additional details if they are at no relevance to the proposed project. You might be asking for asking funding for research for maybe neurobiology. And in those cases, don't mention an MSc project that you have undertaken which is related to cancer. So, don't give irrelevant details that will just, keep the momentum low. So try to give additional details that will strengthen your proposal, as in give your biodata if you think that you are a unique expert in this field. Or try to give the details of existing facilities at your university or organization. You might have like maybe a very high-end equipment that not many universities have, but is very essential for your proposal. So you can add such details. And it would be good to have a sustainability plan. If you have other funders who are interested or have funded a project that have led to this particular proposal, you can add such details. So add only relevant details, and you can also add publications that are relevant to this particular proposal. Now, finally, read and revise your proposal from a reviewer's perspective. You always have to keep in mind that, as I told, a review committee meeting might last for half a day, and not everybody on the panel will be expert in the area that you are proposing. So try to give the details, and don't expect the reviewer to spend more than 30 minutes on your particular proposal. So try to make their job easy by using clear, simple, explicit statements. Use active statements, use graphics to convey your ideas, use bullet points, and don't use too many fancy adjectives, like this is a remarkable, significant. I mean, don't try to use too many adjectives in the same sentence. You can use few adjectives to show that you are passionate about what you are proposing, but don't end up putting too many adjectives in a single sentence. Finally, you have to sound confident and clear. And, that's pretty much what I have to share today. And, I would like to end up saying that, grant writing is not rocket science, but considering the level of competition that we have now, even Newton would have struggled to get his gravity proposal funded at these times. So on that note, I would like to stop and thank all the attendees here who listened to me today. I hope you at least had like a few points from you could take a few points from what I shared today that might help you with your future grant proposal submissions. Thanks again for coordinators of this webinar for this opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jinu. There are a few questions in the chat box.
Sure. I'll just stop sharing and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I read it over?
Oh, sure. Yeah, please.
Shruti is asking that if you don't have any instrumentation facilities regarding for a project at college, and if you want to outsource it, is it the reason for the rejection of the grant proposal?
No, that is not a rejection. In fact, I would like to say that there are specific grant opportunities out there which target universities, teachers and researchers at universities. So you have better chances of getting funded if you look for such opportunities. I had listed a few in my presentation, but I couldn't read it out. But they are, as far as I can remember, one is by DBT, a star. I think it is a It's called a STAR program for university. And I'm sure that AICTE has a grant scheme specifically for university teachers. So please look out for all those, and not having necessary facility at your university is never a reason for rejection, provided you can provide in your proposal what your backup plan is. You have identified existing facilities at some other places, and you intend to collaborate with them, or you plan to procure this particular instrument with so and so funding. So if you can state how you're going to tackle that problem, then that is not a reason for rejection.
Okay, next question. Shruti is asking that mention some common funding agencies.
Common funding agencies would be, to start with, it will be DBT, DST, CSIR, of course, UGC for, they have specific program for university teachers. They have this UGC major program and minor program. So that is specifically for university teachers, and I would recommend that you apply for that because the chances are high. And there is this DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance for biomedical researchers. So if that is relevant to your research, that is something that you can apply to. Those are some to name, but I would also recommend you to go to this website that I mentioned, the NCBS RDO website. So that covers almost all the funding opportunities.
There is something regarding social science research grant proposals. Any input for research in social sciences?
Can you repeat that question?
Adra is asking like any specific input for research in social sciences.
Not really, because we have a management wing at IISc, and they do put out proposals for socially relevant things like the humanitarian ones. So there are international agencies and NGOs who fund such projects. So I would say that there is one government agency called the International, I can't remember the name, but it is something like ISCR, something like Social Science Council or something like that. There is a national body for that. So please look out for that. And also they are mostly, you can look out for foundations for social science related funding. One option that you can look is, there is something called CSR Box. Just Google CSR Box. That is a website that maintains information on grant calls. Subscribe to their newsletter, and you will be getting alerts about funding opportunity for socially relevant research proposals.
Dr. Jinu is asking that there is any funding agencies in bioinformatics.
There is, DBT has a specific program for bioinformatics. Please go to the DBT website, and under their programs, you will find this bioinformatics and genomics related. There is they have a separate program on that. So I would recommend that either you can. I forgot the name of the specific funding agency, but you can go to the DBT site and the information is there. They'll also give the information about the corresponding program officer. So write to that person and they'll respond. Or if you don't get a response, feel free to write to me. My email ID is jinu.m206@gmail.com. I can find you the details.
Hope the questions are over. Let me welcome Abraham Mathew, sir, HOD Botany Department, to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you, Jinu.
A very good morning to all. On behalf of St. Peter's College, IQAC, and the Department of Botany, I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to those directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar. At the outset, let me extend our sincere thanks to resource person Dr. Jinu Mathew, who presented a very informative talk on this subject. I hope the tips and techniques shared by the resource person will be an asset for the participant to ensure research grants. I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Shaju Varghese, and IQAC coordinator, Dr. Jinu Varghese, for their enthusiastic support and motivation to organize this event. It is an honor for us to see that this webinar has participation from different states across India. I extend warm regards and thanks all the participants, not only from Kerala, but from other states as well, who have made this webinar a grand success. Further, special thanks to the coordinator, Rameji Nair, teachers, non-teaching staff, research scholars for their timely support and coordination. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jinu, on behalf of St. Peter's College, Koilacheri, and Botany Department, IQAC. And personally, my dear friend, I would like to extend my deep gratitude towards you. Thank you, one and all the participants over here. And thank you for joining with us today. And have a nice day. The feedback form is included in the chat box. Please fill it up for receiving the e-certificate. Okay. Thank you, one and all, for joining us.
Ramya, just one point. I have added my email ID in the chat box.
Okay.
So if you have more questions, please feel free to. I couldn't answer. I could see there were more questions, as in one was asking about the interdisciplinary programs. So, you can look for all these funding agencies. Most of the funding agencies out there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Please note it over. It is shared in the chat box. Okay.
Yeah. So the interdisciplinary programs, as in, most of the funding agencies now, they promote interdisciplinary research. So if you have a collaborator and an interdisciplinary program, you have better chances of getting funded. And, all the major agencies that I mentioned, like DBT, DST, they all support interdisciplinary programs. And there are specific calls out there for interdisciplinary ones. It's hard to say what are the interdisciplinary ones because there are many options. So, you can email me and I'll try to respond to you as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Jinu.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The webinar session is now over. Okay. Thank you.